1, 2, 3. So, what are you making me today, aside from this delicious coffee?
The one that was too sweet?
It's good.
We are making homemade sofrito. I see you, internet. I see you wanting to not buy products from a specific brand. I feel you. I'm here to show you how to make sofrito at your house. Obviously, like in Puerto Rico, there's so many different brands of sofrito, but I know, at least where we live, there's really only that one brand. So if you want to avoid that, this is an easy way to make some homemade. And then we're going to use that sofrito to make some pink beans too, that are very tasty over rice. So
okay, but quick question for, the people that are new to this world.
Oh, sofrito.
How would you describe sofrito to someone who doesn't know anything about Latinx cooking?
It's like a seasoning base that you would use in stews and soups and beans. It's basically a lot of vegetables and herbs that have been processed into a paste. And then you throw that in with your onions or whatever you're sauteing during that portion of cooking, just to give it some enhanced flavor.
If you were into memes, this is where you would insert The Rock, the wrestler, when he going like this. Because that's the meme where it's like when the sofrito hits the pan. It's really delicious.
I'm gonna add that. Wait, do it again.
Okay, and so this is by itself vegan, right? There's nothing in it that could make it not vegan.
You would think that, but some people like to put in some like pork fat, or you just add in like little chunks of pork into it. So actually my mom's recipe, she doesn't make it with the pork. She makes it vegan just because, but that's what her recipe is supposed to be, with some pork in it. So
all right.
I think it just depends how devoted you are to the consumption of animals.
I'm not that much. So no. I'm ready to get started.
Yay! Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to start cutting up your onion. I don't know why I chopped it quite so small. I think I'm just so used to doing it, but this is all going to go in the food processor. So as long as you've got it in somewhat smaller chunks than a whole onion would be, you're going to be fine. As you noticed when I did the ingredients, I didn't put quantities. That's because for sofrito, it's really a matter of personal taste. You can see how much I'm putting in, but at the end of the day, it's really up to you. Do you love onion? Do you want a ton of onion in there? Do you not? This is gonna season your food, so it's up to you how much you want to put in. Next, you're gonna get your recao or culantro. In English, it's called coriander, and I don't usually see it in like mainstream grocery stores. I got mine from the Latinx market near my house. But if you can't find it, it's totally okay to use cilantro instead. I know a lot of people who make their sofrito with cilantro, and it's really good. I mean, the whole point of this is just to give that burst of flavor to what you're cooking. So using cilantro is going to achieve that too. So no worries if you can't find the recao, cilantro works. Next, you're gonna add your sweet peppers, and I mean, I say sweet peppers, but if you want your sofrito to be super spicy, go ahead and use any kind of spicy pepper. Again, this is a very flexible recipe. I wouldn't even call it a recipe, right? I'm just showing you like kind of what goes into it, but you can definitely make this your own. Now at this point, my food processor was looking pretty full, so I went ahead and gave it a few pulses just to get everything down to the level where I could then add my tomatoes. After the tomatoes, which by the way are also optional, sofrito tends to have tomatoes in it and be a more reddish color, but we also have something called recaito, which is basically sofrito without the tomato and it's just the green stuff. So again, like a lot of these ingredients are kind of for you to pick and choose. So if you can't have tomatoes, leave them out. It'll still taste delicious. Really the most important combo here is the tons of fresh herbs, either recao or the cilantro, and then that mix of peppers. So right now I'm using a bell pepper, just throwing it in because I had half of a bell pepper left in my fridge. You could add more or less, and then obviously garlic also to taste. I really like garlic, so I put a lot of it in there. Memo to self, do not try sofrito raw. It is definitely meant to be cooked. I may or may not have tried it just to see. I don't know. I had never tried it before. I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea. Chris thought I was crazy, and I was. It tasted awful and it burned my throat. So definitely save it for the cooking. Next, I added some oregano. If you happen to have fresh oregano, even better. The fresher your sofrito is, the better it'll taste. I didn't have any, so I just used dried oregano. The last thing I added to my sofrito was some achote or ground anado. You don't have to use this. I just like the flavor. But I will say that it turns my sofrito a kind of swampy brown. So if you want it to stay as vibrantly green, then avoid any dark colored spices. Once you are happy with the texture of your sofrito, you can put it away. I highly recommend that you use glass if possible, just because the odor of it is hard to get out if it's like a plastic Tupperware, and it'll also stain too. So glass is just better all around. Now that we have our sofrito taken care of, we're gonna go ahead and start on the beans. I know that brown rice is way healthier, but when I am eating beans like this, like Puerto Rican style, I really just love to eat them with white rice because it's what I grew up eating. So I already went ahead and made some white rice, medium grain rice. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in seeing how I make my rice, because I can definitely make a video about it in the future. But for today, I'm just gonna already have the rice made and just show you all how to make the beans. The first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and add some heaping spoonfuls of sofrito to the pot. You can cook it in a little oil, or if you're oil free, you can just put it in directly, and you're just gonna let that sizzle for a little bit. And whew, it smells so good. Next, you're gonna add in your beans and mix them in well with the sofrito. So these beans are already cooked. I'm using canned beans in this recipe. You can definitely use dried beans if you prefer, but you're gonna have to soak them and cook them ahead of time. When I make my Cuban black beans, which are my dad's recipe, I do prefer to use the dried beans because I'll make them in my slow cooker. But for this, honestly, I always use canned. Next, we're gonna add our water. I use half the amount of water as I do beans. So if you have 2 cups of beans, then use 1 cup of water. This is a little bit of a personal preference too. I like my beans on the thicker side, but if you like soupier beans, then definitely go ahead and add more water. Up next is the tomato paste. This is what is going to thicken the water that we just added to the beans. Again, assuming you're using canned beans, if I'm just doing one like regular size can, then I'll do, maybe like 1/3 of a tomato paste can. If I'm doing a big can like I am today, then I'll do more like half of a tomato paste can. Next, we're gonna add our sazón, which is a very common seasoning in Puerto Rico. I added 2 teaspoons to my beans just because I'm making a big can, but if it was smaller, I would have that. If you are still boycotting the same brand that makes the sofrito, may I recommend Cooking with My Doctor. They make both sazón and adobo, and it's made by a chef and a nutritionist, so it doesn't have any fake colors added in, it doesn't have any chemicals, it's all natural. They get their color from like turmeric, and they're really delicious. Taste exactly like the stuff that I used growing up. And last but not least, you are going to add a bay leaf or 2 depending on their size, and then you're just gonna let your beans simmer on low until all the flavors kind of melt together and they thicken up to the consistency that you want them. This is the point where you would add a little more water if you think you want them to be soupier. Definitely taste them and see if you want to add a little salt or pepper. But yeah, for the most part, they're pretty much done. They just need to simmer. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Veganísimo con Andrea, and buen provecho! Enjoy your sofrito and your beans!